The Bank of Japan has kept interest rates down for 34 years, 33
That's
or
right,
34
that's right.
years. If you ask me, that is a mistake.
Do you have any views on the stock market, which had been sluggish over the past 40 years?
Well, I owned Japanese shares. I sold them too soon, but the market is probably going to continue strong because the Bank of Japan is printing a lot of money. Stocks nearly always go up at a time like this.
On the U.S. stock market, will Trump administration bring any positive and or negative impacts or any changes into the market?
You see a lot more speculation. You see some stocks go up every day. So I would imagine that in 2025, the American stock market will make a top and start going down.
皆さんこんにちは。ファンドアナリストの篠田尚子です。本日は世界3大投資家のジム・ロジャースさんにインタビューをさせていただきます。最新刊の、日銀が日本を滅ぼすについての内容をまずは前半でたっぷりとお伺いしまして、後半では米国株式市場の見通しですとか、あるいはその投資のヒントになるようなお話も伺っていきたいと思います。今日はシンガポールとつないで、実際にジムさんにお話を伺います。
篠田さん、前回のニックさんとのインタビューで結構視聴者の方からコメント来てたんですけど、なんか篠田さんめちゃくちゃ英語喋れるなみたいなコメントがあったんですけど、篠田さんってなんでそんな英語が堪能なんですか？
実は高校卒業までアメリカで過ごしておりまして、日本の学校に行ってなかったっていうことですね。はい。生まれは日本なんですけれども。はい。
じゃあ今日も別にジム・ロジャーズさんとは英語で。
はい。英語で直接お話をさせていただきたいと思います。ドキドキします。
篠田さんにとってジム・ロジャーズさんってどんなイメージだったりしますか？
やっぱりずっと本とか、あといろんな動画、セミナーとかも参加しましたし、実際にお目にかかってたので、一方的にいろんなご著書とか拝読してたっていう、まさかこんな機会いただけると思わなかったので、大変貴重な機会だなと思うと同時に緊張してます。
今日ちなみに、どんなことを篠田さん的に聞きたいかって、ちょっとポイントみたいなところも軽く教えていただけたらと思います。
はい。やはり最近のご著書も拝読していて、日本の金融政策とか、様々な政策に対する厳しい、見方をされてらっしゃる中で、じゃあどうすればいいのかっていうこともぜひ、ご意見をお伺いしたいですし、あとはまた、米国株市場についてどのようにご覧になっているかとか、日本の投資家が参考にできるような、例えば投資のヒントとかですね、そういったところも可能な範囲でお話を伺いたいなと思っています。
トランプ政権になったみたいな話とかもあると思うんですけど。
そうですね。これはやっぱりいろんな方の意見を聞いた方がいいと思っていまして、その中で参考にできるものがあれば皆さん取り入れていただきたいなと思うので、ぜひぜひそのあたりもお聞きしたいと思ってます。So, Mr. Rogers, thank you again for joining our show today. My name is Shoko. I will be an interviewer for you. I would like to start off with some questions on your latest publications, which is in the Japanese title, 日銀が日本を滅ぼす. So, let's start with some questions on Bank of Japan. What's your assessment simply of the Bank of Japan's monetary policy, which has maintained ultra-low interest rates for a long period of time?
The Bank of Japan has kept interest rates down for 34 years, 33 or 34 years. If you ask me, that is a mistake. It's always a mistake for any country to have artificial interest rates, whether they're artificially low or artificially high. And in Japan's case, they were extremely low, unproductively low, and it's had effects in Japan. I mean, the Japanese birth rate has collapsed, partly, I think, because of the wrong interest rate, the wrong monetary policy. You know, the Japanese population has been declining for 14 years. I mean, that's not usual in any country, especially a country like Japan. So something has been wrong. I would say that part of it has been the Bank of Japan monetary policy.
Yes, exactly what you said. So with Japan's economic growth sluggish, how do you feel the Bank of Japan's policies are affecting it. What policies maybe do you think that the Japanese economy needs right now?
Well, the Japanese economy, if you ask me, needs to stop spending such gigantic amount of money by the government. Japan is building up huge debts, very, very high debts. I don't know what you're getting in return, and it's not helping the Japanese economy. The Japanese population is declining. I mean, everything is a problem in Japan. And unless something changes, there won't be a Japan in 50 years.
Then how would you evaluate the current governor of the Bank of Japan, Kazuo Ueda, so far? What expectations or any concerns that you have for him?
Well, something has changed at the Bank of Japan. I hope it's for the better. You know, your stock market is going up after 34 years, which is a positive change for any country. Your stock market was down for over 30 years. That is not good. And that's partly because of monetary policy. I hope that the Bank of Japan now understands you have to have normal international interest rates. You cannot print too much money, and you cannot build up huge debt. We'll have to see. I think they say they're changing. You can ask me in 4 or 5 years. I hope they're changing.
Okay, thank you. How do you think about the risks of inflation and the yen depreciation that's been going on for past several years?
Well, there's certainly inflation, not just in Japan, but in much of the world. And that's partly in Japan's case because of artificially low interest rates. You know, you can borrow money for nothing in Japan. That is not normal, and that leads to higher spending and higher inflation historically. And I would repeat, I hope somebody in Tokyo will do something to get interest rates normal and get the birth rate back up. Whatever you have to do, your population has been declining for 14 years. That is not good.
I see. You mentioned a little bit about the immigration policy. Maybe that could be changed here in Japan as well. So what's your opinion on Japan's immigration policy?
Well, you raised a number of immigrants who can come in recently. You raised it by a very, very small number, but at least you raised it. You know there's a problem. Japan has to have a lot more babies or a lot of immigrants. Now, your families are not having babies and you don't like immigrants. So I'm not sure what you're going to do. If you don't change, there's not going to be a Japan. The debt will go higher and higher. There will be less and less money for the government, and the country will disappear. And I want to tell you, Japan is one of my favorite countries in the whole world. So I don't want Japan to disappear. I love it there.
Mm-hmm. Changing immigration policy can be one of the solutions for Japan not to disappear.
Well, immigration helps the population situation. Now, many countries, look at America. America has built great success as a country and an economy based on immigration. Right. Australia has a lot of immigrants. It has been a successful country. So many countries have succeeded because of immigration. Now, I'm not Japanese, so I cannot tell you what to do. But I can tell you, you have to do something about your population problem and your debt problem.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I want to change my question into this way. So what changes do you foresee in the labor market as Japanese companies actively accept immigrants? So can you tell us about the impact, the possible impact, or with both positive and negative, and that this will have any impact in the Japanese economy?
Well, obviously, if you change the population, it has an effect. And if you change the population with some foreigners, it has an effect. But many countries have found, if you look at what's happening in Europe, they have many, many immigrants.
Right.
Many of them are illegal, but Europe is prospering. America prospered greatly with immigration. Immigration, in my view, is good. It brings new ideas, new energy, new capital, lots of new things. Yes, you have to eat different food and you have to talk different languages sometimes, but that could be good, not always bad.
I see those points. Going back to some questions on the Bank of Japan and the monetary policy in Japan, about the asset purchase program, what do you predict will be the long-term impact of the Bank of Japan's asset purchasing program on financial markets and companies?
Well, it has to be controlled. Japan is running up huge debts. Japan is becoming an extremely indebted nation at a time when the population is declining. I can add, I can subtract, and I know that if Japan continues to go deeper and deeper into debt, it will be the end of Japan. Many countries have tried to run up huge debts. That has not ever been a way to succeed for any country in history. So I would tell the Bank of Japan, stop running up huge deficits, stop spending money you don't have, and make the country on a sound economic basis.
Okay. Can you share us your views on the Japanese stock market? Nikkei 225 surpassed 40,000 yen, reached a historical high in 2024. Do you have any views on the stock market, which had been sluggish over the past 40 years?
Well, I owned Japanese shares. I sold them too soon. I sold them this year in the fall. So I obviously sold too soon. But the market is probably going to continue strong because the Bank of Japan is printing a lot of money. They're keeping interest rates low. So with low interest rates and a lot of money, a lot of free money, obviously it has to go somewhere. And one of the places it always goes is into financial markets. Stocks nearly always go up at a time like this. I wish I had not sold Japan. I sold too soon.
So you shared us your views on the Japanese stock market. How about your view on the U.S. stock market? Will Trump administration bring any positive and or negative impacts or any changes into the market?
The American stock market has been going up for 15 years without a big problem. That's the longest in American history. Never in American history has the market done so well for so long. I would suspect that's coming to an end. I see some signs. You see a lot more speculation. You see some stocks go up every day. Many stocks are selling at extremely high prices. So I would imagine that in 2025, the American stock market will make a top and start going down.
A lot of people, especially the young generations, are investing in the U.S. stocks, especially the index, the passive index funds like S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100, using NISA, the tax-exempt account for the individuals. So a lot of people are concerned about the U.S. stock market recently. That's why I asked this question.
I am very concerned about the American stock market too, for all the reasons you named and some others.
Yeah. So, but how about in the long term? Maybe like 5 more longer years, like in the midterm, like 5 years or 10 years. Do you have any views on that?
Well, yes. America is the largest debtor nation now in the history of the world. So I would imagine that the next decade or two is not going to be great in America. I would imagine that people should find stock markets in other countries that would be better, where the situation is not, so there's not so much debt or not so many problems coming.
I see. Can you give us any hints for any other investment opportunities besides U.S. stocks?
Well, Uzbekistan, I've been buying shares in Uzbekistan, but that's probably not for most people because it's not a big market. China, the Chinese market is down. China had problems with a property bubble and the virus, the illness that went around. So I would say that China is much more interesting for me than is Japan or most other countries.
Any other countries or regions that are currently attracting particular attentions? Like, do you have any hints on the next investment frontier?
Well, I would say the agricultural or the commodity market is another exciting market, or interesting market. I own silver and gold. I would be buying more silver soon, probably. Agriculture is depressed, and we're all going to eat. We're all going to wear clothes. So I would say if people look at commodities, they might find some very good opportunities to invest. But most markets are very high. I said China is not high, Uzbekistan is not high, but look at Japan. I mean, Japan is going through the roof after 34 years. So I would look at places like agriculture or China, places that are depressed.
Okay, thank you. The current geopolitical tensions, like the Middle East situation, the Ukraine crisis, will give any effect on those investment opportunities?
Yes, I am extremely worried about the possibility of bigger wars. We have a couple of small wars now. History shows that small wars sometimes become big wars. If that happens, no stock market will do well. Investors do not like war. So if it turns into a big war, markets everywhere will suffer. Well, let me just say,
Sure.
If there's war, commodity markets might do better because people have to have copper. They have to have wheat. They have to have a lot of commodities if there's a war.
I see. How about gold?
I own gold. I own silver. I hope I can buy more silver soon. Gold is near an all-time high. If gold goes down, I will buy more. I am not selling my gold. I am not selling my precious metals. I want to buy more. I don't want to sell them.
I see. So would you say that even for the individual investors, do you think that the precious metals should be invested in the longer term with a long investment time horizon?
In my view, everybody should have some gold and silver in case of emergency or in case of big problems, case of disaster or war. So I urge everybody to own some gold and some silver. If they want, they can own other platinum and palladium and things like that. But in my view, everybody should own some gold and some silver.
About the portfolio management, so how should individual investors adjust their portfolios amid continuing global inflationary pressures? So you mentioned about the commodities, the precious metals, and some investment opportunities in the emerging markets. Do you have any other opportunities? How about fixed income or bonds?
Well, interest rates in most countries are at historic lows, so I do not own any bonds. I mean, maybe there should be a special situation or something, but interest rates are very low, and that is usually not a time to buy bonds.
So the mixture, maybe a combination of the broad market index or the index funds, passive ETFs, plus precious metals and or commodities can be a very simple solution maybe for the individual investors. Do you think that's one of the solution or?
Well, it is a solution, but I would never use the word simple when we're talking about investing.
Okay.
I have never known investing to be simple or easy. If investing becomes easy, it's probably going to be bad.
Okay, great. Thank you. How do you think about the development of AI technology? Do you think will it change the investment decision-making process?
AI is going to change everything we know. It already is changing everything we know. A lot of people will lose their jobs because of AI, but electricity changed everything too. A lot of people lost their jobs because of electricity, or the railroad, or television, or the computer. Yes, the world is always making technological progress. I hope that continues. Some people always suffer, but usually more people benefit. So I expect AI to cause many people to lose jobs, but it's going to cause others to have great success.
Okay, thank you. How about in terms of the investment decision-making process for the investors, the institutional, including the institutional investors? Do you think AI would help?
Well, yes, AI will certainly help, but remember, the computer helped investors too. The internet helped investors. Mm-hmm. Of course, AI is going to help a lot of things, but you must be careful to use it right, because if you use it wrong, you could have made a fortune using computers to invest, but you also could have lost a fortune. So please be careful. But AI is going to make investing much different and much better in some cases.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So I want to move on to a different question, perspective on China, the current situation in China. I wanted to ask you, how do you think the structural changes in Chinese economy mean for the investors in Japan?
Well, if investors in Japan understand what's happening, they can invest in some Chinese companies and probably make a lot of money. But you also have to remember that the changes in China will also affect some companies in Japan. Some will profit and some will have problems. I mean, Japan is a huge growing economy. That is certainly going to affect Japan because they compete with Japan and China. And of course, some companies will do well and some will do badly. Investing is not easy. I wish this were easy, but it's not easy. So anybody in Japan needs to understand what's happening in China because it will affect the Japanese companies and the Japanese economy in good ways and bad ways.
Yes, exactly. As for the investment opportunities, a lot of the Japanese investors are now interested in India instead of China. Do you have any views on the Indian economy?
Yes, the government in New Delhi has never really understood economics, in my view. But now, for the first time in my career, it seems to me that the government in India understands that prosperity is good, that success is good, and they are encouraging prosperity for the first time in my life. They've talked about it for many decades, but now they seem to mean it. So I sold my Indian shares too soon, but I hope I can buy them back because, as I say, for the first time in my life, the Indian government seems to understand that prosperity is good and that sound economics will be good for India.
Do you think that will continue?
Well, yes, I think it's going to continue. We'll have to see. I have sold my Indian shares, so if it doesn't continue, then I can invest again. But if it does continue, there will be times when the market will go down. No market goes straight up forever. So I hope there will be other opportunities, and I hope I will be smart enough to buy more Indian shares in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. That will become a very good hint for the Japanese investors as well. Because in Japan, after NISA has started in 2024, a lot of the younger generations, like investors in the 20s and 30s, have started to invest instead of just putting their money into the bank accounts. And I think that's a good move as a Japan overall. So can you share us or can you give any message to the younger generations or the young investors in Japan? Or if you could maybe share us investment philosophy to the Japanese young investors that have started investing in 2024.
It is extremely good that there are more investors in Japan. That's good for any country. You want more investors. You want young investors as well as old. So it's good for Japan that this is happening, that they're investing in other countries. But it's also historically a sign that a market may be coming to the top Because when you suddenly get a lot of new investors who don't know as much as they should, it often is a sign of a top. So I would just urge everybody, especially the young investors, to be very careful. Please do not invest in anything unless you yourself know a lot about it. Everybody wants a hot tip, but I would tell you, please stay away from hot tips. Hot tips can make you bankrupt. Everybody wants to be rich fast. I want to be rich fast, but I will tell you, it is usually bad. So be very, very careful. Stay away from hot tips.
Yes, that's very important, I guess. I really liked your quote in a different book that you published here in Japan, that you were saying that what's important in investing is to think by yourself and to invest in something you know a lot about that product or something. So, and you mentioned the importance of making research on what you invest. And I really like that quote. And I would like to share that quote to Japanese investors and those who are watching this video as well later on.
Well, I would just like to take up on what you were just saying and what we were just discussing. You know, when I started in the business as a young investor, I was good at it. And at one point, after 2 or 3 years, I had a huge success. When everybody else was losing their shirt, I was making lots of money. So I thought it was easy. And then, to make a long story short, a few weeks later, I lost everything because there were things I did not know because I was inexperienced and young at investing. So I would like to tell everybody over and over again, be very careful. Be sure you know a lot about what you're doing. And even if you think you know everything, be very careful. And if you have great success, please close the window and think of something else to do for a while. Because if you're young and inexperienced and have great success, it might lead you in the wrong direction. Do not invest in anything unless you yourself know a lot about it. Don't listen to me or anybody else. Stay with what you know yourself.
Thank you so much. Yes, the Japanese investors, especially in the young generations, are now doing their investments on a regular basis, the regular savings or regular type of investment like a 401k. So I think it's a good move, and I think what they're doing is it's very the fundamental way of investing, I guess. So do you have any suggestions on how to invest? Not what to invest, but like how to invest, maybe regular investment type? Do you recommend that type of investment, or do you have any hint on that?
Well, I usually invest in stocks and bonds and currencies and commodities. So I would suggest that investors know as much as they can about all assets, because the price of commodities will affect your stocks. If the price of copper goes up a lot, it's going to affect some of your stocks.
Right.
So in my view, you need to know about everything. If you just concentrate on stocks, you're probably going to miss a lot. So it's very important for me to know about everything so that I don't get hit with some big surprise because I didn't know that something was happening. If something happens and you know it's happening, you will know how it will affect your stocks. But please do not just invest in a few stocks or a few hot tips. Only invest in what you know about. But please know about all the economic factors in the world. You should know about stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, because if the price of copper goes up a lot in the US, it's going to affect many Japanese companies or companies all over the world. And that's an example.
I see. Thank you so much. The very last question from us. Well, Japan is facing very difficult situation right now, including the monetary policy by the Bank of Japan and also the aging population issue and so on. Do you have any positive, maybe positive views or anything that's positive about Japan that you can mention?
Oh my God, I told you Japan's my favorite country. It's wonderful. I love everything in Japan. Everything works. It's efficient. The food is wonderful. I love unagi. Unagi is one of my favorite foods in the world. I love everything about Japan. So I'm very sad to see Japan starting to deteriorate and decline. As I said, your population's been declining for 14 years now. The debt goes up, up, up every day. I hate to see it because Japan is so efficient, so beautiful. Everything is such high quality. I love it. But I'm not Japanese, so I cannot stop the decline.
Is there anything that we can do as a Japanese living in Japan?
Sure, you can have babies, or you can encourage more get the government to encourage more immigration, and you can tell the government, you can insist to the government that they stop running up huge debts. It's going to ruin the currency eventually. It's going to ruin the economy eventually. Japan has huge debts. Go down to the government and say, we must stop building up huge debts. We must start paying off our debts. We must cut spending. And then maybe, Japan has the basic infrastructure of people and assets to do well, but not if you turn all of your assets into higher debt, and higher debt. Because then all your assets will be wasted and will cost you problems.
All right, thank you very much.
And I would tell all young people in Japan, or everywhere, but all young people in Japan should know a second language, because everywhere they should. But if Japan continues to deteriorate and get worse, you're going to need to know other languages, if nothing else, to trade with other countries. Or if worse comes to worse, you may have to leave. You may have to leave Japan.
Sorry, one last question about, I was having conversation with Yoko earlier, and can I ask you a little bit about Mr. Scott Bessent?
Scott Bessent, the new Treasury Secretary, he was an intern of mine. His first financial job was working for me as an intern. He knew nothing about finance, because he thought he was going to be a journalist. That did not turn out. So he came to me and asked to be an intern to learn about finance, and he did. It was his first experience in finance.
Do you have any expectations on what he can do?
Well, anybody who's a Treasury Secretary of a large country can do lots of things and has lots of power, if he doesn't make mistakes. But history shows that most government bureaucrats everywhere in the world make mistakes and make things worse. History is full of bureaucrats who made things worse instead of better. I don't know if Scott's going to make it better or worse. We'll find out. When Scott was my intern, it was 40 years ago, 4-0. So you probably know more about Scott than I do.
Okay, Mr. Rogers, thank you very much for your time. Can you give us one last message to those who are watching this video right now?
It's very important for me that every investor, but especially Japan, that they be very careful. This is a new era in Japanese markets. The stock market is booming after 38 years of doing nothing. So it might be great. It's probably not going to go on forever. I encourage everybody to learn about investing, because it will help them all their life. But please be disciplined. Do not invest unless you yourself know a lot about it. And if you know a lot about something, you will know what to invest in. And the important thing is, if you invest in something and it starts going wrong, if you know a lot about it, you'll know what to do. If you don't really know what you're doing, you won't even know what to do, and you'll make it worse. So to me, investing is extremely exciting. It's a wonderful way to spend your life, wonderful way to spend your time. But I've done it enough to know that it is very dangerous, and only invest in what you yourself know a lot about.
Okay, thank you very much for that very important message. And once again, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. As I said before, I love Japan, so I always want to do things in Japan or for Japan.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
You did a very good job. You're good at this. So let me help if I can. And if we can make it better, let's make it better.
All right, thank you so much. I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
はい、今ジムさんとのインタビューが終わったばっかりなんですけれども、改めて篠田さんが聞いてどういったところが重要だと感じたとか、ちょっと視聴者の皆さんに改めておさらいとして伝えたいところっていうところがあればぜひ。
そうですね。やはりこういう環境だからこそ、特に2024年って振り返ってみれば米国株も日本株も過去最高更新し続けて、みんな株式市場に対してリスクを軽視してるような全体的に雰囲気があったと思うんですけど、そういった流れに警鐘をちょっと鳴らすようなお話が聞けたのは非常に貴重だったと思いますし、何よりやっぱり分かってるものにしか投資するなっていうメッセージが一番グッときましたね。はい。
それはなんでなんですか？
やはりなんでしょうね、投資信託ですとか、もちろんそれ以外の金融商品も含めて、今投資できるものというのがどんどん増えている中で、あるいはネットやスマートフォンで簡単に取引ができてしまうと、自分があまり分かっていなくても、少額で簡単に投資できてしまう。これある種危険性だと思うんですよね。そこに対するちょっと警鐘の意味もあったのかなという気がしたんですけれども、分かっているものに投資をしないと、下がった時の理由が結局分からないと。そういうメッセージというふうに受けました。ですので、2025年は警戒すべきちょっと材料もいろいろあるというふうにおっしゃっていたので、そうした中で下がった時に、自分なりの理由をしっかり見つけられるように分かるものに投資をすると。あるいは理解できるまで徹底的にリサーチをする。こうしたメッセージを改めてお話としてお伺いできたのは大変印象に残りました。